Doctors in Vietnam are treating a man and his son who have been living wild in the jungle for the last 40 years.
We stand at the edge of the remote Vietnamese jungle, about to reveal a story almost too wild to be true.
Ho Van Tan fled with his 2-year-old son Lang when his wife and 2 other children were killed by a mine explosion during the Vietnam War.
A father and son cut off from the modern world for 4 decades, their way of life living off the land as if time had stopped. Ready to learn more? A sudden flight into the jungle.
Wild in the jungle for the last 40 years.
It happened during the Vietnam War, a time of chaos and heartbreak. A soldier named Ho Van Tan lost nearly everything when bombs devastated his village and family. Overcome by grief and fear, he grabbed his young son, Ho Van Lang, and fled deep into the dense forests of Quang Ngai province. Imagine the desperation that would push someone to abandon civilization entirely. In that moment, he believed the outside world was too dangerous, scarred by violence and sorrow. The jungle for him became a refuge, a place to hide from gunfire and planes overhead. Little did he know he would stay there for 40 years, forging a life cut off from modern society, building a hidden world. Amid towering trees, father and son worked tirelessly, carving a small domain from the wilderness. They fashioned makeshift tools from wood and stone, learning to hollow out logs for containers. Their first shelter, built low to the ground, was barely more than woven branches. Over time, they grew more skilled. They built tree houses, perched a few meters up, safe from prowling animals on the forest floor. They slept under thatched roofs, made of leaves, skillfully woven to keep out rain. The father taught Lang each survival trick he knew, from identifying edible plants to hunting small game. Despite the towering canopy and ever-present shadows, this hidden world offered them a sense of security they could find nowhere else. War's lingering shadow. Than had been a soldier, thrust into conflict with little choice. His experiences carved deep scars in his mind. Nightmares of bombs and gunshots haunted him, even inside the jungle's hush. He believed the war might still be raging beyond the green walls of leaves. Day and night, he scanned the skies, listening for planes. Whenever a distant rumble echoed, he insisted they hide. The father's fear shaped Lang's worldview. Growing up, the boy never questioned why they lived apart from others. He accepted the jungle as his home and saw outsiders, or even distant silhouettes, as threats. War's shadow persisted in their minds, making them believe they had no future outside these thick, silent woods. Nature as their teacher.
Vietnam War, a man and his son who reportedly lived in isolation for more than 40 years.
Without anyone else for guidance, they looked to nature for survival lessons. They watched how monkeys cracked nuts, how birds found hidden fruit. They observed how wild boars tracked certain root vegetables. In this way, the jungle taught them its secrets. Than and Lang learned which insects were safe to eat during lean times. They discovered how to use certain plants to soothe cuts or fevers. They mimicked animal calls to lure prey closer or to avoid predators. Over decades, father and son refined their bushcraft to an art. Their simple tools were sharpened rocks, bamboo spears, and woven baskets. This harsh but abundant environment became both grocery store and pharmacy, providing almost everything they needed to survive. Shelter in the treetops. Eventually, they realized sleeping on the forest floor brought problems. Snakes slithered near, and heavy rains flooded the ground. so they built huts in the treetops, about 5 or 6 meters above. These huts were strong but primitive, a platform of branches tied with vines, topped with large leaves. From this new vantage point, they felt safer. They could watch animals roam below, and at night, the stars were visible through the canopy. The elevated huts also gave them a sense of control over their surroundings. Rather than cowering in dark corners, they rested high above, swaying slightly with the wind. Each new shelter they made improved upon the last, reflecting years of trial, error, and adaptation. Clothes of bark and fabric scraps. Clothing was always a challenge. Over time, whatever they had from the outside world fell apart in the jungle's humidity. So, they wove pants and loincloths from tree bark, carefully stripped and softened. Bark clothes proved surprisingly durable, though not very comfortable. Occasionally, they found scraps of old military fabric near abandoned camps. Than would reuse these scraps to patch holes or create pouches for carrying items. Lang, growing up, had no memory of store-bought clothing. For him, bark cloth and ragged remnants were normal. They also fashioned crude footwear from rubber or layered leaves, though many days they simply went barefoot, callousing their feet against sharp sticks and rocks. Survival demanded creativity at every step. Daily foraging routines. Every morning, father and son split duties. One would forage for fruits, roots, or nuts, while the other might hunt small animals. They never strayed too far from each other, both wary of wandering too deep alone. They listened carefully for rustling leaves that might signal a wild boar or a stray dog. Their diet was not limited to a single food source. When times were good, they enjoyed monkey, fish, birds' eggs, and jungle fruits like bananas or figs. During harder seasons, they resorted to snakes and rats. Though these choices might sound extreme, in their isolated world, protein was precious. The steady hunt and gather routine shaped their days, ensuring their survival in an unforgiving environment. Memories of family. Though the jungle surrounded them, Than still carried memories of a different life. Before bombs took everything, he had a wife, older children, and a small home. The tragedy hardened his resolve never to leave the forest. Sometimes he would mention these half-forgotten faces to Lang, who could only imagine what life might have been. Whether it was guilt or fear, Than felt compelled to remain hidden, believing the war had stolen everything. Lang grew up with only vague stories of a mother and siblings he never truly met. The father's whispers of the past hovered like ghosts, reminding him there was once a world beyond the tree line. But he also feared that world might still be at war. Strange hints of the outside. Every so often, the jungle offered a glimpse of outsiders, a distant hum of machinery, a plane high above, contrails streaking the sky. Sometimes local hunters or woodcutters ventured closer to their hidden domain. Than would swiftly usher Lang into hiding if they heard human voices. These rare encounters sparked curiosity in the boy, who wondered what other humans looked like up close. But the father insisted they remain invisible, trusting no one. Whenever they stumbled upon discarded objects, metal cans, plastic containers, they stared in wonder at these foreign artifacts. Yet Than stayed vigilant, insisting that any contact meant danger. The outside might be bigger than the forest, but it was also, in his mind, far more threatening. Passing 4 decades. Time in the jungle moved slowly. Seasons turned, storms came, food supplies shifted. Lang grew from a toddler to a man without ever meeting anyone else. Than watched his hair turn gray as the years drifted by. 40 years passed in this bubble of isolation, each day merging with the next. Did they ever suspect the war might be over? Perhaps deep down, Than suspected, but the fear was too strong, the forest too familiar. He had built a life here, one that, in its own way, felt safer than the uncertainties beyond the trees. For Lang, the jungle was all he knew, its rhythms, its dangers, its abundant silence. 40 years vanished into the green, with neither man aware of how much the world had changed. Adjusting to modern life. For Lang, everything was a marvel. Electric fans, running water, cars on paved roads. He touched light bulbs with childlike curiosity, amazed at how they glowed without fire. The bustle of everyday life, shops, traffic, crowds, dazzled him, yet it also overwhelmed him. After an entire life in silence, these new sounds and sights were equal parts thrilling and scary. People tried to teach him basic language skills, though he spoke a simple dialect learned from his father. Meanwhile, Than struggled more. His mental scars and advanced age made the transition tough. He often retreated into silence, longing for the comfort of tree branches and rustling leaves. Still, they were no longer alone, and that in itself was an enormous change. Reuniting with long-lost family. Eventually, distant relatives came forward. They recognized the father's name from early news reports. These relatives remembered the day bombs rained down, scattering families. They thought Than and his young son had perished in the chaos. Imagine the astonishment of discovering them alive after all this time. For Lang, meeting extended family meant learning about a life he never knew existed. The father, too, had to reckon with the knowledge that not everyone was lost. Many emotional moments followed, tearful embraces, attempts to fill in 4 decades of missing history, joy mixed with sadness. While it offered some closure, it also left them wondering how different life could have been if only they'd known the war was over. Local curiosity and global headlines. News of the jungle men spread rapidly, grabbing headlines around the world. Journalists flocked to Quang Ngai, eager for interviews and photos. Many called Lang a real-life Tarzan, referencing the fictional character raised by apes. But the reality was more complex. He was a gentle soul, shaped by necessity, not by fantasy. As reporters snapped pictures and asked questions, some worried this sudden attention would overwhelm him. Local officials tried to shield both father and son from too much media frenzy, reminding everyone that their mental health was fragile. Yet the story was undeniably captivating, a living link to a past defined by war, isolation, and survival. The global spotlight shone brightly, if only briefly, on their extraordinary journey. The father's passing. The stress of re-entry, combined with age and old injuries, took a toll on Than's health. Only a few years after returning, he became gravely ill. Despite care from doctors, the damage inflicted by war, years of isolation, and recent upheaval was too great. He passed away in 2017, surrounded by the people who had rediscovered him. The local community honored him with a respectful farewell, acknowledging his hardships. Even though he never fully overcame his war-torn memories, he spent his final days in a caring environment, not alone in the jungle. For Lang, this was another massive blow. He had lost his anchor, the one constant presence in his life. Adjusting to modern life without his father would be another difficult journey. Lang's continued search for meaning. After his father's death, Lang carried on in the village. Surrounded by curious neighbors, he did his best to adapt. Some days, he helped farm small plots of land, using new methods far different from jungle survival. He visited nearby markets, amazed by stalls filled with food he once had to hunt or gather by hand. Though friendly, he remained quiet, still more at ease with plants and trees than with chatter. Villagers noticed his gentle nature, describing him as polite and childlike, a man who had never known society's complexities. While he was learning, he often wondered if the jungle might have been simpler, yet he pressed forward, guided by the memory of his father's determination to protect him. Friendships and life lessons. Local volunteers and journalists formed connections with Lang, teaching him modern concepts like currency, trade, and cooking on a gas stove. He, in turn, fascinated them with tales of constructing traps, identifying herbal cures, and navigating the forest by following the stars. Kids in the village ran around him, asking endless questions. He would patiently answer, though sometimes he lacked the words. Some nights, villagers invited him to gatherings. He sat quietly at first, but soon smiled at the unfamiliar celebrations. People realized he wasn't a wild man. He was simply raised in isolation. Through this cultural exchange, both Lang and the community grew, proving that even the widest gaps can be bridged with kindness and patience. Health struggles and farewell. Sadly, years of harsh jungle living and an unbalanced diet had left hidden effects on Lang's body. In 2021, he was diagnosed with liver cancer. Friends and caregivers pooled resources to seek medical treatment, but his condition worsened quickly. Despite receiving more care than ever before, it was too late. Lang's passing brought an outpouring of sympathy from neighbors and faraway admirers who had followed his story. Many felt his death marked the end of an era, one last link to a harrowing chapter of history. He had come so far, experiencing a glimpse of modern life, but in the end, his body bore the scars of a lifetime in extreme conditions. His journey closed in quiet dignity. Reflecting on their incredible journey, father and son spent 4 decades hidden from a world that had moved on without them. Their lives testified to the profound impact of war, how one event can push a person to create an entirely new existence. We read about Tarzan in storybooks, but rarely do we see a real person growing up in a jungle, unaware of society's changes. For Tarzan, the forest was safety, a shield from nightmares. For Lang, it was home, the only life he knew, until discovery forced him to adapt. Their tale resonates across the globe because it combines survival, resilience, and the deep, unbreakable bond between a parent and child. Few stories capture the complexity of war's fallout quite like theirs. Lessons from the wild. Life in the jungle taught them simplicity. They didn't rely on money, technology, or machines. Instead, they found shelter in trees, ate what they could hunt or gather, and lived by the sun's cycles. In many ways, their existence was both harsh and free. For those of us locked into modern routines, the father and son's story raises questions. How much of our daily stress is necessary? Do we take for granted the warmth of a home, the convenience of grocery stores, and the comfort of medical care? Their life wasn't idyllic, but it reminds us that human beings are resourceful beyond measure. We adapt in incredible ways, whether in a jungle or a city, when survival demands it. The war that never ended. For Tarzan, the Vietnam War never ended. It haunted him so deeply that he made the jungle his permanent shelter. His story underscores how a single traumatic event can warp perception for decades. Even when peace arrived, his memories were stuck on the day bombs obliterated his world. While many veterans returned to their homes, some, like Tarzan, carried invisible wounds that led them down lonely paths. This tale isn't just about living in a forest. It's about the emotional toll of conflict, about how some survivors feel safer hidden away. Understanding this truth can encourage greater empathy for those who have suffered from war, reminding us that healing involves not just physical care, but mental and emotional support as well. Impact on the local community. The arrival of father and son to the village challenged everyone's assumptions. People who had lived their whole lives with modern comforts saw how a pair of determined souls thrived without them. Curiosity turned into compassion. Some villagers offered them shelter, others taught them basic agricultural methods. The government provided some support, though progress was slow. Their presence led to local discussions about mental health, the long shadow of war, and the importance of social safety nets. It also put Quang Ngai in the international spotlight, drawing attention to remote areas still dealing with post-war realities. In a way, Than and Lang became unexpected ambassadors, teaching the village as much as the village taught them. The lasting legacy. Though both men have passed away, their story remains a testament to human endurance. It urges us to recognize how fear and trauma can shape a life path, sometimes isolating people from a world they cannot face. At the same time, it highlights the courage it takes to return, even if briefly, to the society once abandoned. Their journey also sparks dialogue about the ongoing emotional costs of war, how conflicts can disrupt families for decades. In a country still bearing scars from bombs and battles, the father and son's experience serves as both a history lesson and a warning. War's effects aren't confined to textbooks. They live on in hidden corners of forests, hearts, and memories. A final reflection. This true story of a real-life Tarzan invites reflection on how resilient we can be in the face of unthinkable hardships. Than and Lang survived isolation, hunger, disease, and fear by relying on each other. When discovered, they stepped timidly into a world that had left them behind, only to find pockets of compassion and care. The father's tragedy and the son's innocence intertwined, forming a bond few could imagine. Their path might seem extraordinary, but it's also a reminder that everyone carries unseen battles. Perhaps their greatest legacy is showing that hope can exist even in despair, and that love, the simple bond between parent and child, can flourish in the harshest wilderness. Thanks for watching.